Hello, everybody. I am Daniel Pimienta, the head of the Observatory of Linguistic and Cultural Diversity on the Internet, and I will treat the theme of the indicators of presence online of African language with more than 1 million speakers. I will say a few words about the model which allows us to produce those indicators, showing some data about what we call cyber geography, targeting African language, showing some results of the model for African language, talking about the digital divide in Africa, which is the main cause for a low presence of many African language, the trends, and drawing some conclusions. We are working on a subject since 1998. Before we were not called OBDIC, but we were a department inside the NGO named Networks and Development Foundation from Redes. And the way we compute indicator is not by applying detection algorithm of language on a website, but it is an indirect approximation rather than a measurement. We have observed since the beginning the existence of some sort of economic law which link for each language the offer, web contents, and the demand, internals. More people are connected to the internet, more web appears, which is kind of logical. The main source of our data are ethnologue for the demo-linguistic data, the number of speakers of each language in each country, ITU for the person connected to the internet per country, and a very large set of indicators which try to characterize language and countries in the internet, traffic, usage, technological support, information society readiness. The trick of the model is that indicators of language are very scarce. So we are using more common indicator per country, and we transform them by weighting into indicator per language. The method I'm going to describe has been published and peer-reviewed. Our main work is on bias. When you do this type of work, really the first focus you should have is trying to reduce, mitigate the bias. Many data you can read on newspaper, on Wikipedia, on Statista about space of language on the internet are not peer-reviewed, and following our studies, many are extremely biased. So be careful. The reason we are using only 1 million speaker language is justly because if we will go down, the bias will be too much. So what we are showing is not really a measurement, it is a high plausibility of data for language. Obviously, it's possible that we mention content for some language which are not really used on the internet. This is part of the risk of the method we are using. But if the language is localized, if it has digital existence, it is a high probability that we provide a closed data about its presence. So what are in an ideal world, you will have from the number of speakers and the percentage of persons connected to the internet, we have the proportion of contents. But we are not in an ideal world, so some languages are more present. Their content productivity, which is a ratio between speakers and content, will be different than 1. If it's higher than 1, it's because they are more present in the virtual world than in the real world. And if it's lower than 1, it is because they are not very present in what we call the virtual presence. So what are the factors which allow this more or less modulation? The relative number of L2 speakers, the traffic in the country where there are speakers, in terms of tariff, digital literacy, digital culture, if there are many people subscribed to social networks and other main applications, the technological support for the language, is it present in translation, is it present in the interface of many programs, and obviously the progress of the speaker's country in information society. Do we have a good e-commerce? Do we have online voting? Do people pay their tax on the internet? All these factors will make the ratio I explained, content probability, more or less, and this is how we approximate the data. So we use many indicators and statistical tricks to approximate and pay a lot of attention to bias. So we go from today we have almost 1,500 micro indicators. We build 5 main indicators: percentage of internet per language, usage, traffic, interface, so information society index, and from that we create virtual presence, I explained already, percentage of content per language, content productivity, percentage of speakers connected, percentage of internautes, and some others that we call cyber globalization and cyber geography. All that have been installed in a database. You can go today in the URL I'm specifying, and using the ISO code 3 letters of your language, you can check and obtain data like this one. This is for Hausa, ISO code HIU, and you got 88 million speakers, L1 plus L2, 28 million connected speakers, 31% of people connected. It represents 0.23% of the content worldwide, with a trend which is not positive, a virtual presence which is very low, 0.29, and a content productivity. You can take any one of the 362 languages we are measuring and ask on the database. And you got also the main data. The ethnologue talk about 10 billion point 7 speaker L1 plus L2, 7.4 billion L1 speakers, a rate of multilingualism of 44%, and 6.8 million people connected L1 plus L2, which is 64% of the world L1 plus L2 population. So if you look at African language, this is a table where we have collected, gathered all the results for all language from America, Asia, Europe, Pacific, and Africa. You have the result for Africa, which are compared to the other language very low, 0.36 in average virtual presence. You got 152 language which are really inside the database. It is only 6% of the connected population, and you got 36% of people connected in African language, which is not very high. If you look at the 30 more important language in terms of content, you will start by English, around 20%, followed by Chinese, very close, 19%, Spanish, Hindi, Russian, Arabic, French, Portuguese. I have put in the same color, for instance, Hindi, Russian, Arabic, French, Portuguese, because they are within the confidence interval. The difference between 3.8 and 3.2 is not enough to say one is higher than the other one. They are within the precision of our result. Japanese, German, and you got below Swahili, which is in position in this table, which is the first African language which appear in our results. With a low virtual presence of 0.37, but it have a lot of people of appear in the table. If you look at the top indicator for African language, in terms of content, Swahili, Pidgin Nigerian, Hausa, Zulu, Yoruba, Afrikaans, Wolof, between 0.3 and 0.1% of contents. In terms of population, you got the same one, Swahili plus other one which are high in population but not so high in content. In terms of connectivity, it's a different picture. This is an indicator which is independent of the number of speakers. It just talk about the capacity of the language independently of the number of speakers. Here you see Tarifi, Tamazight, Tachelhit, which means that Morocco is well connected, so the language in Morocco are very high. Mauritian, then you got Sezwana, Soto Northern, Ndebele, Xhosa, Afrikaans, Zulu, which are language of South Africa, which is a good, well-connected country. If you take now the virtual presence, you will find again the same one which were good in connectivity, no surprise. Cabo Verdeano, which is not many speakers but very good connectivity. If you look at the content productivity, you got some new language appearing on the classification. Now, if you take the other side of the bottom side, here you got the less connected on the language we have. It's Masaba, Lango, Shiga, Sogo, Yankore. If you take in terms of population, you have Cabo Verdeani, Tigre, Bissau, which are almost, I think for Cabo Verdeani, very close to 1 million only. Virtual presence, the lowest we have is Sango, and in terms of productivity also is the same. Now, why all those languages are not so good? It's just because Africa has a really deep problem of digital divide in many countries. Those are the 25 countries with a lower percentage of persons connected to the internet, data produced by ITU and updated every year. Over 25 countries, 19 are from Africa. Uganda, Central African Republic, Burundi, South Sudan, Chad, Niger have less than 20%. Now, there are also some good news. If you take the evolution from the last 4 years, from 2019 to 2023, the country will have the growing, the more important are also in Africa. So they are good news. Eritrea, Somalia, Libya, Sierra Leone, Niger, Comoros, Congo, Angola have seen a real growth. They still have to work, but there are a trend, a recent trend of more connectivity in Africa, which is good news. If you look at the percentage of English in the internet, if you read the newspaper, you will see between 92 and 2007, they will say 80% flat. If you take the newspaper from 2007 to today, they will say 50%, 60% flat. This is not true. This is a more probable curve of the percentage of English in the web, getting from 100% the first day of the World Wide Web, growing to an asymptotic today around 20%. Maybe the asymptotic will go up to 25, 20 or 30 when Africa get really in the game, because many English speakers in Africa. If you look at the step of the internet in terms of language, it starts very clearly with a very strong English dominance, the first 10 years, followed by the growth very strong of European language, English staying at the lead, but all European language, French, Spanish, Danish, Swedish, getting their place in the internet, and starting 2008-9, Asian language and Arabic getting on the game. And today we are really very in a situation we can call multilingualism, although it's only 10% of the existing language. We estimate 750 the number of language online. Now, if you take the language with 1 million speaker, it's only 336, but it is 95% of the speaker in the world. So if you take L1 plus L2, it is very probable that today more than 97% of humans can deal with the internet either in mother tongue, either in second language. That does not mean that we don't have to work, and this is why we are meeting in this conference, because the presence online of language and the speaker is right. So we still have to work in the 95% of language which are not online. But it is important to understand that the internet today is a multilingual realm, probably the most multilingual realm in the world. If you look at projected data for 2050, this is a map of the world based on superficie equal demography. So the continent and the country are sized in proportion of the amount of population. So you see that in 2050, 25 years from now, there will be two huge continents, India and Africa. So this have a lot of implication for language on the internet. We can hope that on the 25 years coming, the digital divide will be solved in Africa. So the future for African language and also for English, French, a little less Portuguese, who are present in Africa, but the future of African language is very good. So to conclude, the priority which have to be given in terms of public policy for language on the internet in Africa is obviously the digital divide. Increase the internet penetration in all African countries. But this has to be done cleverly together with digital literacy programs with a strong component on content production. You have to create more producers than consumers. If you want really to make a difference, you have to do that the internauts getting on board on the internet have a content production mind. The second idea is to empower the rest of the language in Africa for digital existence. And I know that many people on this meeting, this is their goal and their way of living. For conclusion, the history of language in the internet have evolved from a start of English dominance toward a very strong multilingualism, but leaving aside a high proportion of language with low number of speakers. Within this evolution, Africa has been left aside. Now it's time for African language to take their place. The lingua franca of the internet is no more English. It is multilingualism boosted by EA power tool for translation. Demography tells us that by 2050, Africa will be the most important continent in the world. So it is a major strategic requirement that this demographic advantage will be turned into a strategic advantage for language of Africa, with impact not only linguistic but cultural, business, and geopolitical. Thank you for your attention, and any question, I will take them on the session now.